Hey everyone, in today's video we're going to study a very wild attacking game by Soviet Grandmaster Efim Geller, who was a very aggressive player, and he's playing against none other than former world champion Vasily Smyslov, who was a great defender. So in this game we're going to learn a few things like how to build up an attack, some very nice checkmate patterns, and how a misplaced knight can make a huge difference. So let's get started with the game. Here Geller started with the move d4, and after knight to f6, c4, g6, knight to c3. Here black went for the move d5 for the Grunfeld defense. Another common move is to go bishop to g7, the king's Indian, but this would allow the move e4, where white gains full control of the center. So after d5, white goes for the main line, taking on d5 and then going e4. And after knight takes and b takes, this is one of the advantages that white gets in the Grunfeld. White gets a very nice center, but black's idea is to counterattack the center after the moves bishop to g7, bishop to c4, and then going c5. So this position, white normally wants to keep the pawn on d4, taking on c5 would ruin the pawn structure. In this particular position, black could even take the pawn on c3, and the knight normally goes to e2, the main point being that if the knight goes knight to f3, black can pin this very important knight that is supporting the center. So knight to e2 was played, and after both sides castled, these are just very common moves in the Grunfeld. Black went for knight to c6, increasing the pressure on d4, and after bishop to e3, queen to c7. Here white went rook to c1. White is anticipating some trades on d4, and the rook on c1 might be eyeing the queen on c7. So here black kept the tension and went rook to d8, also increasing the pressure on d4, and eyeing the queen on d1. And in this position white has a few options. Probably the most natural move is to go queen to d2, just connecting rooks and keep on developing, but Geller, who is a very aggressive player, he went for a very interesting move, which is the move f4. The main idea is to go f5 and then open the f-file for the rook. White has some nice pressure against f7, so black played the move e6, which is very logical, trying to prevent this idea, controlling the f5 square. And in this position white played a very quiet move. White went king to h1. So sooner or later we're gonna get some trades and we might get more open lines, so the king is going to be less exposed on h1. So this is just a very common idea. After playing f4, going king to h1, the king is safer there. And here black played a very natural move, b6, preparing to develop the bishop and connect rooks, and now white went for the very aggressive move f5. White could have tried other ideas like queen to e1, planning to bring the queen to the king side, but f5 is more direct in Geller style, and here black went for the move knight to a5. In any case, let's evaluate the critical line, which is to take the pawn f5. Here white has a few options, even taking on f5, and then playing something like knight to g3. Looks quite interesting. White has very good compensation for the pawn. But also another idea is to go bishop to g5, attacking the rook, and if the rook moves, for example, to f8, overprotecting f7, white can take on f5, or another interesting idea is to go knight to f4, just improving his pieces. Knight to d5 is coming, and the point is that after black takes on d4, now we see an advantage of the king on h1. If black takes on d4, black is not going to give a check, so in this position taking on d4 is actually quite bad for black, because now bishop to d5 might come. There's going to be a lot of pressure on the c-file. Also knight to d5 is a very strong idea, so this is a great position for white. So here Smyslov went for the move knight to a5, attacking this very important bishop and driving the bishop away from this very important diagonal. So after bishop to d3, now black took on f5, and after e takes f5, black doesn't want to take on f5 again and ruin his pawn structure. That's why black went for bishop to b7, and after queen to d2, now black is ready to build up pressure on the f-file. Black went rook to e8 to bring the other rook to the d-file, activate the rook on a8, which is very passive, and after knight to g3, black went queen to c6. Even though it might look nice to build up a battery against g2, white can defend easily against that. Here black had a chance to stay in the game. The main idea is to try to bring this knight back to the game after taking on d4. If white takes with the bishop, then the knight might come back to the game after knight to c4, or if white takes with the pawn, the queen can move away from the c-file and the knight is ready to get back in the game. Because after the move queen to c6, even though this might look active, first of all, g2 is defended, but white overprotected the g2 square, but the main idea is going to be to double on the f-file and increase the pressure. Black went rook a to d8. Now Geller went bishop to h6 to trade this very important bishop, which is defending the king. Black avoided this, by going bishop to h8, queen to f4, planning to take on g6 and then give a checkmate on f7. So black is already having quite a bad position. Here Smyslov went rook to d7, defending f7. Now black is planning to take on d4, but Geller simply ignored that. He just brought more pieces to the attack. Basically, all of white pieces are eyeing the queen side, besides the rook on c1. And in this position, black went c4. Let's evaluate other alternatives. Probably the best practical try was to go queen to c7, trying to trade queens. In any case, if white is careful, white will simply avoid the trades. For example, after queen to g4, there's still a lot of pressure on this position. Is actually winning for white with correct play. Taking on d4, after white takes, white will attack the queen, and after the queen moves, here white has many options. The most natural move is probably to go knight to g5, following up with the main idea, which is to bring the knight to attack. So here white has a lot of pressure on black's position. And in the game, black tried the move c4, which I was very surprised to see, because even though it is attacking the bishop on d3, now the knight on a5 is going to be passive forever. The bishop on h8 is also now hitting against a wall, so just based on having much better pieces, white is going to have a crashing position. Here white went bishop to c2, keeping the bishop on this diagonal. Although black had a point, which is to double rooks on the e-file and then invade if the knight moves, Geller was not planning on moving the knight. He just built up with rook c to f1, and after black took e4, here comes the first queen sacrifice. Geller took on g6, and the point is that after black takes the queen, we get a very pretty and strange checkmating pattern with the pawn h7. Instead, black tried f6. If black takes on g6, which might look like an interesting try, white can simply trade on e4. Now black can only take with the bishop. If the queen takes, white will take on f7. If black takes with the rook, queen to b8 will be a checkmate. And after bishop takes, white can even take on f7. And then rook to f8 is coming. We're gonna see this pattern in a lot of lines. So here Smyslov tried to close the f-file with the move f6. But here comes another pretty queen sacrifice, queen to g5, just increasing the pressure. g7 might actually be an idea in this position. Black cannot take on g5 because rook to f8 will lead to a checkmate. So here black went queen to d7, preventing g7 ideas. And here white played another very nice quiet move, king to g1, even though it was not necessary. One of the main ideas is to get away from this diagonal. Also, there are not going to be problems on the back rank as well, so even though white is a piece down, it doesn't feel like white is a piece down, because his knight on a5 is totally out of the game. Black pieces are also quite tied down. For example, the rook on u4 cannot move, since white will take on h7, and the pawn will be protected by the bishop. So here black tried bishop to g7, and here Geller went for another sacrifice, rook takes f6. Here Smyslov tried to counterattack with the move rook to g4. The point is that after taking on f6, white will threaten a checkmate on f8, and black cannot prevent this. For example, after queen to e7, white can go for queen to f7 and then force a checkmate on f8. So here black went rook to g4. Trying to counterattack is generally a good idea, but in this position, black's position is still desperate. And before I move on with the rest of the game, if you want to seriously get better at chess, I have a free course that will provide you with a training plan for that, so feel free to check the link in the description. So here after rook to g4, white also didn't move the queen, he went for the attacking option, he took on h7, and after king to h8, bishop takes and queen takes, this is all very forcing, and to finish a very nice attacking game in style, he went for another queen sacrifice after queen takes, and in this position, Smyslov resigned, since after queen takes, white will force another checkmate after rook to f8, rook takes, king to g7, white will promote to a queen, and give a checkmate. So hope that you enjoyed this very nice attacking game where white slowly but surely built a crushing attack. Thanks a lot for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.